All right.
Oh, and as soon as you left and you said, wow, Brady turned around, made a touchdown.
Another touchdown. Your boyfriend, Tom Brady.
I know, my
But
boyfriend.
that's one of the questions they want to ask was about your boyfriend when you met Dad.
Oh,
Because we don't know the story about how did you meet Dad, and where were you, and how did you meet him, and how did that happen?
oh my gosh, well, there's a story to that, too.
That's what we want.
Okay,
What's the story?
okay. Well, that summer, oh gosh, where do I start? Well, in a small town like North Ogden, a lot of us had just really good friends, right?
Yeah.
And Bob Fox was one of them. He was a very good friend, but in his mind, I was his girl, because that's how the town felt.
Bob Fox.
Bob Fox. And yet, when we went to church, I didn't sit with him, anything like that. But in his mind, I was his girl. And as far as the town was concerned, and his mom and dad, I was. But he left for the Navy, and he wrote to me, and I answered. And he sent me a lot of pictures, and they're in my photo album. Yeah, sure. Then I went to college. We were at college. And Ron was playing football. Now, you know, I'm a sport. I like football, you know. And I thought, wow, look those teams. Now, I had heard of Ron Lowder because of Carol, my niece, but she's my age, Carol and Joanne. And Carol had dated Ron at Mount Fort when she was in 9th, 10th grade. And I remember her saying something about Ron Lowder. And Lowder stayed with me because we had the family in North Ogden, the Lowders. And so I watched him, and boy, he was really a star. But I had Mark Balliff, who is also a star, playing also. But that's another story. Anyway, so I thought, interesting. And I signed up my classes. Now, I was a year ahead. He was a freshman. And I was president of Otiaqua, the social club. And I was an attendant for the homecoming queen, you know. So there was a little notoriety, not much, but enough that some of those guys had recognized Elaine Barker, you know. But I didn't think too much of that until I signed up for photography, because, you know, I like pictures and everything. Well, he did too. But we happened to be in the same lab. We were college, they just had the one lab. It was like Tuesday afternoon. Walked into the lab, and there was Ron Lowder. And I thought, And I said something, I don't know. You know, you don't remember all of that. But anyway, after a few weeks, now we're getting into October, and he was playing. Mr. Raby, our instructor, noticed a little chemistry. Thank you. And one time I said to him, we got to get out of here. I'm going to miss my bus if you don't let us out. And he said, oh, Ron will drive you home. And Ron picked up and he said, oh, yes, because he had a car. And I thought, oh, okay. So we left, and I thought, this is fun. And we went down down 25th Street along Washington. Isn't this funny? I can remember it because I've told this story a number of times. And we passed by the Egyptian Theater, Don't ask me what was playing, but I said, gosh, I'd like to see that movie. He said, you haven't seen it? I said, no. He says, neither have I. Let's go to the movie. I said, oh, I'd love to. Ta-da, first date. And I thought, I got that date. But when we went back to normal college and class, I had a sewing class with a lot of kids from Ogden High, some of the girls. And I remember Beth McFarland, good friend of kids. And I said, Beth, you know Ron Lowder, but he's a year younger. She said, oh, everybody knows Ron Lowder. I said, you know, I'd like to date. Oh, she said, he only dates the high society, the ones that go skiing. And I said, I'm going to get a date with it. Yeah, sure. And I thought, there's the challenge. He only goes for those high society girls. But I'll get him. I didn't know how, but just being yourself. That's the way you do it. And by golly, he started coming out. I was working for Uncle Marvin he had a little confection, and I was making sodas and, stuff like that behind the counter. In fact, I learned how to make a cherry iron port, the drinks. And so the summer came. I will tell you this, though. He did ask me to one of the dances after the ball game. And they were playing Snow College, and it was late. And he said, I hate to tell you this, but he says, shoot, I might break my leg. And I said, that's okay. I'll wait till you get back from the ball game. Mother sat there with me, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. 10:30, 11 o'clock, and Mother said, what I remember is that he's not going to come, Elaine. And I said, gosh, I really thought he meant it. Well, about 12 o'clock, I got a phone call. You won't believe this, but I really did break my ankle. I said, you did? He said, yes, I'm at the hospital, blah, 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 blah. But I still wanted to go to that ball game tomorrow. It was University of Utah playing BYU. I don't know who they were playing. But he said, I really want to go to the... I said, with your cast? He said, oh, yeah, I can still do it. It's the left leg or whatever. And he said, I really want to take you to that ball game. I said, well, okay. So he picked me up for the game, but what did I know? He was on crutches. And we walked into this. Now, this is a big, University of Utah. And he said, they're my parents. I about died. His mom and dad were way up there with Aunt Kim. And I thought, that darn guy, that's why he brought me along. He wanted to see the game. But if he brought me along, his folks weren't going to get after him for, broken ankle, on crutches. So he introduced me to the folks, and they were just as sweet as could be. Very, very congenial. And so that was how we met, in the dark room, photography, and that's how we got our first date. And subsequent after that. But I didn't really think it was love or anything like that. We had fun in the summer. We went to the dam. I learned to water ski. There was just a bunch of us together. And that's how it ended up. Now, in the meantime, some of my North Ogden friends told him I was writing to a missionary. And it was Bob Fox. But nothing serious on my part. but it was on Bob's. Well, Lowell Thorstenson, and Lowell is still alive and still a good friend. So my dear friend Carmen tells me. Anyway, he said to Ron, did you know she's writing to a missionary? And it's kind of serious. Well, it wasn't, but one night I remember Ron said to me as he dropped me off at, I don't even know where we'd been. And he said, what's this I hear about you writing to a missionary? I said, oh, yes, he's in New Zealand. And he said, well, I'll tell you now, it's him or me. He said, take your pick. And I'll see you at school tomorrow or something like that. He didn't even walk me to nothing. And I said, oh, okay. And I got out. I remember coming in. I was shocked. And Mom and Dad had already gone to bed because farmers, they went to bed early. But I always checked in with Mom and Dad. We had a real close relationship. Youngest in the family, you know. And I went in and I told them what had happened. You know what their response was? Don't you hurt that boy's feelings. And I thought, did they mean Ron or Bob Fox? And I thought about that. And Mother said the next day, she said, if you're serious with this young man, you better write to Bob Fox and tell him. So I waited, I don't know, what do I remember? I wrote him a Dear John. But, so I went with him the rest of the summer. And Bob came home in the winter sometime. I don't remember. But at that time, Ron was getting more serious. So he'd go to church with me. And I told him, I said, I want to go this because Bob was coming home from his mission. And I wanted to hear his report. Oh my gosh, maybe that was a mistake, I don't know. I can remember where we sat. That's how embarrassed I was. And Bob had the nerve to say, well, and everybody says it's the best 2 years of their life when they serve a mission. He says, well, it wasn't mine because my girlfriend left me.
You're sitting in the audience.
And I was sitting there with Ron in the audience.
Was this the North Ogden Ward?
North Ogden Ward. And where everybody thought that we were going to be a couple. Well, it wasn't my best 2 years because my girl left me. Oh, I could have just died. Anyway, but like Ron said, people were as nice to him, but he was a big star at Weber.
Big man on campus.
Big man on campus, and the papers are full of Weber College and football and Ron Lowder, da-da-da-da-da.
And basketball and football.
So they all knew Ron Lowder. But I really didn't feel like I loved the guy till I went to BYU. And I left, and I went to BYU, and I thought, doggone, I miss him. And that's when I really thought, there's something there. And Ron Paul put upon the board, going to Ogden, Utah every weekend, I need writers. And I answered, I said, I want to write. And now they live in our ward.
Ron Paul lives in Oak Grove.
Right here in Ignacio Valley. And we laugh about that because I rode back and forth from Ogden to BYU.
With Ron Paul.
With Ron Paul.
To see Ron Lowder.
To visit, to see Ron's games. And then that was, September, October. And then he gave me a diamond in February.
So you got engaged in February.
Got engaged in February.
And got married in June.
And get married in June.
By David O. McKay.
By David O. McKay.
Because he was a friend of your mom's.
Yes.
Growing up in...
Mother was in Huntsville. No, President McKay lived in Huntsville with his family. And Mother's family was in Eden. And the two were close together.
North Ogden Canyon.
Yeah, through North Ogden Canyon. Like Cedar Hills and all those little towns, Yeah, where you guys are. And cold, back there. You talk about going home in the snow. Oh, it was so cold back there they'd have 5 and 6 feet of snow. And it would freeze over the fence tops. And David O. McKay loved the horses. So they had horses. And David O.'s father was called on a mission. And here's Sister McKay left with these children. And my grandmother took care of the children, helped Sister McKay with the family. And I thought that was interesting. They had such a bond. But President McKay sometimes would bring my grandma home back to Eden on horseback. And so they really had a bond there, the two families. And believe it or not, when he taught at Weber College, Weber Academy, that's what Mother went to Weber Academy, and she took English classes and everything, and he taught Mother. Mm-hmm. Mother was in his, so he knew the family very well. And then when my grandma died, they let President McKay know. And Grandma died on a Sunday, the very day, or Saturday. Oh, I need to look back. I think it was like the very day that I had a trousseau tea. In my day, the cedar chest, you keep it with all, tablecloths, dish towels, all those things that you think you're going to use as a new bride, pillowcases, and then you show them to your guests. And my mother's mother died then. So they were planning the funeral on Tuesday. See, these things are kind of fun. Tuesday or Wednesday, Tuesday. And President McKay said he would love to speak at Grandma's funeral. So he came. Nobody knew but the family, because if everybody knew that President McKay was coming, there wouldn't be room for the family. So, but we knew he was coming. So President McKay was there. We got to talk to him, and we, in the meantime, we'd had that letter from President McKay that he would marry us.
He offered to marry you.
Uh-huh. So, this is Elaine. So he met me then. And then Wednesday, they had the funeral, I guess. And Thursday, Ron and I went down for our endowments. And then Friday, yes, it was Friday, that we went down to be married. And President McKay was so cordial. And he said, "Myrtle, I'm so sorry Clarence couldn't be here." My dad. Yes, he was in the hospital, very ill. But I didn't know. I just thought he was sick. Well, Ron and I took him to the hospital. Different ones had said, "Clarence, your eyes, you're just looking yellow." But he wouldn't go to the hospital. And finally, he knew that the wedding was coming up, and we were sending out invitations. And finally, Ron said, he's got to go to the hospital. And Mother didn't drive. And the others were married, elsewhere. So Ron and I took him to the hospital. And I remember sitting on his bed, addressing wedding invitations. He was there for maybe 3 weeks before the wedding. And he kept saying, you go ahead with your wedding. This is just some little thing. I'll get better and I'll get back. So President McKay said, I'm so sorry Clarence couldn't be here. What did I know? I thought, he's going to be home soon. And come to find out, Wayne knew and Mother knew. They had operated on my dad and they found cancer. Full of it. The liver, the pancreas. And in 1953, they didn't know what to do with it. They just sewed him back up. And only Wayne knew. Mother said, don't tell a soul. I don't want it to spoil Elaine's wedding. They're going on this fantastic honeymoon with the Lowders back east, because he was governor of the Lions in Utah. And so he was going back there to a big convention. And he told us if we waited till July 4th, then we could go on this big fantastic honeymoon. Sure, we'd love to do that. We could see everything. All the church spots, and Niagara Falls and New York and everything. So, and Mother didn't want to spoil that. So nobody said a word. Dad came home from the hospital about the 2nd or 3rd. And we were going on the 4th. And I remember sitting, and I didn't know. I thought, oh, Daddy's home. So we showed him some of the gifts, happy. You're just on cloud 9. And Dad, well, for all purposes, he was feeling like his normal self. In fact, when I look back now, I see a picture, and he had gone back to the orchard before he died. And we left on the 4th, and he passed away on the 11th of July. Nobody told us anything, but they went ahead with the funeral and everything. And finally, was it Aunt Dot or somebody, when we were on our way home, about Colorado or maybe Wyoming, somewhere.
What was the date?
They made contact with the family, with Dad Lowder.
So when was the date? What date would that have been?
And about the 28th, 27th, we were back there for a good 2 weeks. Mm. And they told him then that Dad had passed away and they'd had the funeral and everything. So that they knew. So when they dropped us off, we were going to stay with Mother until Ron, because he had to go in the Army. They had already given him his papers. The miniature, and by the way, when you read President Hinckley's book, that was one of the hardest parts of his presidency. When the war was on, was it President Hinckley?
What war?
Korean.
Korean War, yeah.
53, 54.
Well, he wouldn't have been prophet then, no.
No, he wasn't.
Okay, who was it?
David O. McKay.
No, it wasn't President McKay.
So it was after.
See, after.
Joseph Fielding Smith.
Anyway, well, it was. He wasn't president. He was just on the board.
Oh.
President Hinckley, he was in charge of whatever it was.
But not while he was president. But
he wasn't president of the church.
One of the 12 or something.
But he was in charge of the missionary or something. And he couldn't call these fellows on missions because the Army said, nope, restriction. Maybe one per ward or something like that. And he tells about it in his book, that was one of the hardest parts of his presence, or his service, you might say, at that time. So we were going to just stay with Mother till Ron left, like September 1st or October. Some of those things I don't remember now. So when we got home, Linda, or Karen was there with Mother. Was somebody else? I don't remember. Was there in the kitchen with Mother. Just stay with her till we got there. And then when we got there. And I remember Ron saying something about, are you going to be okay? I said, yes. I said, I had good memories. Whoops. Anyway, gosh, I haven't thought about that in a long time. But it was tough. It was tough. I think the hard part about the whole thing was when Ron left, and then I had to go back to school and leave Mother alone. That was the tough part, I think. But I told Mom, I remember that. I said, don't worry, I'll be back every weekend. And I really thought I would be. You know, you say these dumb things and you really think you will. And, but I don't remember. I don't remember any of that. But I remember about Thanksgiving time, one of my good friends had married Bill Southwick, another good friend that had to go in the service with Ron, Fort Ord. And that was a fun time. We went, the Southwick said, we will go to, talk about snow. They said, we will go to Fort Ord for Thanksgiving, and we'll take you to brides with us. Now, coming from Utah to Fort Ord, southern, do you kids know where Fort Ord is?
Nope.
Monterey. Do you know where Monterey is? That's Fort Ord. 2 lanes highway. And all across make this a 4-lane highway. Call your congressman. Make this a 4-lane highway. And the snow in November, and I remember the Southwicks, Bill's dad, saying, you bet, we'll write to the Isn't it things that you remember about that? That's what I remember about that trip. And then I remember going to the base with Ron and getting ice cream for nickel, Fort Ord. That's that.
Because you couldn't join him there at Fort Ord. You were in school at BYU.
And I went back to, yep. Oh, that was something else. When Ron had a hard time catching Dad to ask permission to marry me. He tells me that story. He said, Mother said, oh, he'll come in today about 1, I think. So Ron didn't make that trip. No, Dad didn't show. Dad had to go back to college. He tried 2 or 3 times. Mother apologized, you know. She said, he said he'd be here. Finally. And all Dad said was, I just want that girl to graduate. That's all I care about. You're a fine young man, Ron. Love you, blah, blah, blah. But that girl's got to graduate. And he said, oh, that's no problem. She plans to go back to school. I'm going into the Army. No, yeah, that's no problem. But to hear him tell about it, oh, he told that story. You know, it's funny. He had a hard time catching these farmers.
Yeah, so he was at Fort Ord in the Army, and you were at BYU living with Phyllis and Frank now?
After we left Fort Ord, we went back and stayed in their basement.
So you joined Dad at Fort Ord.
I taught school. After I graduated, I finished up early, and then I had my teaching certificate, and I applied and got first grade right there in Seaside Elementary, and it was the best experience. I had a little black girl, Mary, that lived just down the street from where she was the sweetest little gal, and her mom and dad were just as nice as could be. And that was my first experience, really.
Were they military people there?
Yes, a lot of military.
And Dad he was at Fort Ord for a couple years?
2 years.
2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he was done, and you went back to BYU.
And then we went back to BYU.
And then you moved in Phyllis and Frank's basement.
And we took our Mitzi, our white Samoyed puppy, with us. Oh! And the Phyllis's kids love Mitzi.
Richard and Betty
and Richard will tell you the story about following him to school one day.
Yeah.
And they didn't know. And Mitzi got in the class, in the school, smelled Richard right to the classroom. And when that door was open, that dog went right to Richard. And Richard, Mitzi. And the teacher said, "You know that?" "Oh, yeah, I know that dog." "Well, will you take that dog home?" And because they weren't that far away, you know. Yeah, Richard tell you that story. Oh, and I think how we just landed in Phyllis's with that dog, and he slept in her flower bed, and the kids loved Mitzi.
And you were there for a couple of years?
We were there while, and at that time, yes.
Dad was playing ball.
And I taught school at Wasatch Elementary 1 year.
You were teaching school, and he was
Is
he was trying to play ball, but then he realized, no, I got to hit the books.
Yes, well, he wasn't one of the five playing basketball. Yeah. And he thought, "Oh, I'm not going to be one of the five. I'm not going to sit on the bench. I want to get out of here and make money." And so Coach Watts, I think it was Watts,
yeah, I think so,
said, "I understand, but he still had his scholarship. He drove the mail truck around the rest of the year, and I finished teaching school. And this is interesting. And all that time, no children, no babies. And I thought, good night, am I ever going to get pregnant?" Because I knew I didn't want to while we were in the Army. But when we went back to school, I was anxious to start a family. No, wasn't happening. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be teaching school again. Now, we had a bank account because we'd spend it all. Phyllis, $15 a month, I don't know. I was helping her with her housework and everything. So we had a nice bank account. And that's May or something. Maybe Dad told you. We went home and he bought that Mercury. We saw that car and we thought, wow. And we kind of needed a new car. He'd had that one since we were college. So, like dumb college kids, Army, we spent all our cash. We paid cash for that car. And the next month I found out I was pregnant. And they wouldn't hire me. come September. In those days, they didn't hire you to teach if you were pregnant.
Yeah. And that's
so we
you moved from when Dad graduated BYU, you went up to
we went back and stayed with Mother
went back to Ogden.
for we were there till Justin was born in February.
What year?
57.
57. And then while we were there, we were looking for a home, and that's when we found one up in North Ogden, up on 300 East, where we saw Blackie the Crow, Yeah. And then we had Justin and Jill.
And he was working for Thiokol?
And he started working at Thiokol. No, he was at J.C. Penney's.
Oh, he was J.C. Penney in Ogden.
He was at Ogden, J.C. Penney's. And then at that time, how was it we left North Ogden and moved to Ogden? Because that's where we had Tori. No, we went. Gosh, I don't remember. Anyway, because we had Tori. No, we moved to. No, after Mother we left. We went to Ogden 2nd Street. Because we moved there, and it was it was a new young ward, and they called Ron into the bishopric. That's where, on 2nd Street, yes. And that's where we had Justin and Jill, and then Tori was born then. Yes, and Ron was, and then they divided the ward, and here he was, 26, 27. And then when they divided the ward, then they put him in as bishop at that time. And then he called these two fellows. And they were there at his funeral.
Oh, really?
The two of them.
Huh.
And Demont Judd, I think, was one of them. I can't remember the others. And then from there, he got the job. That's when he gave up pennies, because he'd come home and here's these 3 little kids that he never saw. And he thought, why am I
retail's tough hours,
leaving at 7 a.m, and he'd come home. In fact, I got pictures of him sitting, ordering merchandise, holding Justin as a baby in these books, ordering. 7, 8 o'clock at night, and the babies were going to bed. No, this isn't for me. So $300 a month. $300 a month. He thought, nope. And I remember there were times when our budget was nothing. And I'd put a note under our milk bottle. Marvin was delivering the milk. Marvin, can you leave an extra $5? I'll pay you back. And there'd be a $5 bill under the milk bottle. Can you believe that? Yeah. And he thought, nope. And so he quit in Bulof's. He was the bishop at the time. And he had this little business. So Ron went to work for his business right there, selling merchandise. But he brought in a couple of family members, and Ron thought, nope. When you start bringing in family members, he was out the door. He knew that. And that's when he thought, I got to look elsewhere. And he found J.C. Penney in Downey, California. And also Thiokol, and I thought, oh, here we go. California, here we come, But it looked like a good deal, and I thought, oh, California, I'd leave all my family, blah, blah, blah. And But we waited the last minute. We were practically on our way. And the call came through from Thigh offering him a job. Woo! Wow, made it. So that's when we moved to North Ogden. And he was still bishop. So he had to explain to him that he changed work and we were going to have to move to North Ogden for Thigh. We had practically sold our home because we were on our way to California. And I think it was President Story at the time. Oh, they understood. I mean, he was young, just beginning his career. That was no problem. And so he was released as bishop, and we moved to North Ogden. That's when Tori was run over with that car and everything. And
then I was born, and then you moved to California. So what made you leave Thiokol and move to San Jose?
Well, the business kind of went sour for Thiokol. And United Technology in San Jose was hiring. And Ron was one of the last at Thiokol. And they cut way back at Thiokol. And Ron said, I'm going to get cut again. And he said, this job at Thiokol in San Jose really looked good. So I said, okay, but
your sister Jetta was living there.
Jetta was right there in San Jose.
San Jose.
And but you know what I told him? I will move with my 4 kids, but we're taking the mama cat and her 4 baby kittens. And Ron said, wow, okay. And we did. And when we landed in San Francisco, you've heard this story before. You haven't heard this story?
What part?
Kim and Phil, they were living in...
Kim and Phil were in Sacramento?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
They were in... what's right next to San Francisco? One of those close by.
There. Kim and Phil were there?
Yeah. They met us, and they brought an orange crate for the mama and the babies. But it was funny, and we talk about this, because they had the mama and her little ones in these big crates, that they carry them in.
You flew.
We flew on the airplane.
With a cat.
With the cat and the babies.
5 cats.
Yeah. And this big carrier, And when they brought in, all the people thought, ooh, here comes some fancy, And so they kind of gathered around, expecting his... Yeah, they thought they were going to see... Yeah, they didn't know what they were going to see.
It's just a stupid cat.
And so they looked around, and when we picked up the children were thrilled to death. Oh, there's a muffin. And Justin remembers the name of the cat because he looked back in his scrapbook or something, and the babies. And so we put them in the crate that Kim and Phil brought, put them in the back of the car, and drove to Jed and Floyd's. But when we got to Jed and Floyd's and opened up the trunk, zoom, and we thought, wow, what was that? The mother cat got out of that crate somehow and took off. Now there we were, gone. New area, San Jose. Whew, we didn't even know the area. Jed and Floyd. And there we were with 4 little kittens. We thought, what are we going to do? So Ron and I went back to the house on Argonne where we were going to live and made up the beds for the children. And we were gone, maybe a half hour, 45 minutes to make up the beds. And I looked around the house. I thought, oh, honey, you did a pretty good job. he keeps saying, what color do you want this bedroom? What color should we paint the kitchen? Blah, 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 you know. And I said, hey, did pretty good. I'd never seen the home. I didn't know what I was moving into. But anyway, it turned out all right. And so we went back. And while we were in visiting with Jetta, she said, listen. And that mother cat was at their front door meowing. She had found her way back just by smelling her babies.
And listened.
We opened up the door and there was the mother cat.
She came back.
Miracle, miracle.
Still had your cats.
So we had the mama cat and her 4 babies. So
So then we were in San Jose there. Was Grandma and Grandpa Lowder in San Diego at this time?
they were in San Diego.
How long? When did they move to San Diego? While you guys were in the army and all
They
that? Or?
they were in Denver.
Oh, they went to Denver.
They were in Denver all that time. And then his health was bad. And the doctor told him, if you want to live, you got to quit the radio business and move someplace where it's, not snowy, easy on. So they moved to San Diego
With Lynn.
with Lynn.
Who was still
Lynn was 7 or 8,
Yeah.
like that. And so they moved there.
Okay.
And that was nice.
Because then once we were there in San Jose, we would go down there for Easter.
And
then
let
come
me
up
tell
for
you,
Christmas. Good.
when we got off the plane, this one was just walking, just learned to walk, and ran to his daddy. Just what?
Because
Were
Dad
you
was
about
already there. You,
16
you
months?
And the kids flew. You and the kids. He didn't fly with you. Dad was there.
No, he was in San Jose.
He was already.
It was just
working,
me and the
getting house ready.
4 kids, and
5
you were
cats and 5
the
cats.
baby. And
You
then, yeah,
baby and kids and cats flew.
and you were what?
1.
11, 1, 12. You just learned to walk. 12 months.
Yeah.
Well, the minute I got there, I got pregnant
And then had Darren.
and I had Darren, and you were, yeah, and he would have been born another June, but I had to have him and you were 2 years apart, so.
Came early. So we were in San Jose for just the 2 years while he was still working for Penny or Thiokol there at first.
Yes,
San
then
Jose.
oh yes, and then see, when he quit that call, went to no insurance, and I got pregnant. And all the problems we had with Darren, and no insurance.
Gosh, Darren.
That kid was 3 years old before he was paid for.
He's a fancy baby.
Yeah, because this one, see, we had so many problems with this RH.
The RH negative
Yeah,
business.
he had 2 complete changes. Todd did.
Blood transfusions.
Blood transfusions. As a baby,
Now they just give the mom a shot.
he wasn't even maybe just hours old when they changed his blood. Because, yeah, oh, that was horrible. And so when they found out that I was pregnant with Darren, right, blood tests on all the kids to make sure what was going on. And so no insurance. Oh, brother. And then, top it all off, Dad was at United Technology, and then President Kennedy was shot, killed,
1964.
and that took care of United Technology. I guess they quit making whatever or what. They started laying them off there. So Dad thought, here I go again. So we went back into retailing and worked for Buster Brown, whatever that to what was it? Who sold Buster Brown?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Clothes.
Shoes.
Yeah.
Anyway, he traveled with that down into Mexico, selling everywhere. And then at White Front, he went to White Front for a while. Oh, that was a tough year or two. Oh, it was bad.
Then how did he get hooked up with the lab?
Well, that was interesting because at that time he started applying different places, and there again it was technology again, and it was here. And so we were in San Jose, so this was the easy place to apply, Berkeley. But what were the hopes of that? He didn't know. And he was in San Diego, left San Diego and went on Tijuana or something. But he left his number at Mom and Dad Lowder's because he was going to stay there for a couple of days. But just in case he should be notified, he left the number there. And when Dad Lowder said, "You got a call from, this place."
Lawrence Berkeley Lab.
Lord, LBL. And Ron said something about, "Really?" And Dad said, "You get on that right now. Don't you wait a minute." He said, "You drive right up there for this interview. Don't call. You just leave right now and go up there." This is Grandpa Lowder telling him, "You don't call. Don't do it. You get in your car and drive right up there for an interview with Mortaboy." I think it was the name of the state is right there. So Dad did. He didn't call. He just went right up. And do you know that interview talked about church, BYU, football, being a bishop,
Being a football player,
all these things that he had listed. Nothing about technology. And Ron, he came home that day and couldn't believe that interview.
Okay, just want to talk about football and church?
Football.
Right up Dad's alley.
Football. And the fact that he'd been a bishop.
Football.
But it was personnel. That's what they wanted. They wanted somebody who could relate to the public, and he loves sports. Murder boy. And then, who was his name? Black. He was a black. And Dolores, his secretary, is black. And he loved her. She was the nicest gal. She had one child and bought the finest clothes. And then did you kids ever get any of her son's clothes? I don't remember. It seemed like she wanted Ron to bring home some of his clothes that had outgrown. I guess maybe he didn't. But when her husband died, Ron was the only white man with the gloves to the funeral as a pallbearer. Dolores had Ron as a pallbearer, ball bearer.
Yeah.
And he stayed there for 23 years.
Yeah, so once he landed that job, that's when we moved to Concord in 66.
Yep. And it was a good fit. He weathered the storm all through the 60s.
60s in Berkeley.
Berkeley, whoo.
60s.
Yeah.
Mormon bishop with a black secretary.
Yes. Yeah. But he knew what the church. Oh, but Ron, and he said this so often that he would have just loved to invited them over for dinner. Remember the conversations? But he couldn't do it because of the language, the way he spoke. He says, I just couldn't bring him home. The way he'd rattle off, I just couldn't bring around the kids, Here they were teenagers, and he just couldn't do it.
Then
Wilson was just as bad.
Yeah. Then we started going back to Utah every summer for vacations in August. So you go back to the farm, because when you moved here, it was traumatic, of course. Leaving your family, moving to California.
Oh.
You cried all the way, right?
Every time we'd leave home, and the kids would say, why is Mom crying? And Dad would say, what would he say? Oh, she just loves her family, or I don't know what he'd say. She just loves the farm, or I don't know what he'd say.
Yeah, so we'd go back every August. We'd go back the 1st of August, then he'd catch up to us about halfway through August.
He'd drive by himself all night long to get there in the morning. He'd pull in like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Then we'd have 2 weeks.
That's where you got that from.
That's where I got that from. Then we'd have 2 weeks there and then come back to California. But we'd take the train. See, I remember riding the train.
Yes.
The train, 1st of August. We'd go back for a couple of weeks, and then Dad would drive back and catch up to us.
And I let you kids go up in the dome car
and
all by yourself.
look at the stars.
Nobody would do that nowadays.
Oh, heavens no. Couldn't let them out of your sight on the train.
And I just let you roam the train and
We
go
got
up
a bag of Jolly Ranchers we would eat. We'd get to go buy Jolly Ranchers before we go for the train ride.
And when you were younger and I had to spend with Darren with his earaches, I'd have to go into the ladies' room, the bathroom, and just sit with Darren crying because I didn't want to disturb everybody else sleeping or whatever,
Darren, a big baby, cry all the time.
Sounds like a problem, kid. Holy cow.
Oh, his ears, they'd pop and drain. They just drain.
His
Yeah.
ears, he had to have tubes put in his ears
Just drain. Yeah, he had tubes in twice
twice.
to help drain all that.
Just the bad ears.
Does he still have ear trouble? Finally outgrew it, I guess. You didn't have a lot.
No.
Justin had ear trouble when he was about a month old. I remember Dr. Curtis saying, oh, yeah, new babies sometimes do. But
Yeah. Janelle had the ear troubles with us.
what else do you want to know?
Good stuff.
We've covered a lot, I'll tell you.
Good stuff. Well, we can take a break. Okay, Grandma, so you're back on film, part 2.
Okay, all right.
So we were talking a lot about you meeting Dad and Dad and all that, but we missed the story of your getting engaged.
Right, and Holly wants us to know more about it.
We all do, but Holly remembered.
Okay.
Holly remembered. She's only young enough to remember.
Okay, well,
'Cause Hayden's
and
asleep.
I couldn't remember. I just knew that it was February 14th. And it seemed late at night, and we were driving home, and we'd pulled up the side of the house. And he said he had a box of chocolates for me, and I said, oh, great. Now, this is what I remember. I said, thank you. And that was it.
For Valentine's Day, sure.
Yeah. So I was going to take my chocolates and say thank you and get out of the car. And he said, well, aren't you going to offer me a chocolate or open it up or something? And I just remember thinking, Oh, of course. So I started opening up the box of chocolates, opened up the cover to offer him a piece, and there in the middle of the box was a diamond ring. And I looked at that, and now we were under kind of the arc light, so it was kind of light. But I looked at that, and I picked it up, and I looked at him. Now, it's an emerald cut, so it's square. I'd never seen a diamond like this at all. I picked it up, looked at him, and I said, "Is it real?" He had spent hours with Grandpa picking out this very ring, and I told him, I said, "Is it real?" You know, I wish I could explain the look on his face. He had just, and I thought, and looking back, no wonder. He was tired. He had played a basketball game, in fact, reading all about it. And then, of course, he said yes, and he gave it to me then. And when I went in the house, Mother and Dad knew all about it. They knew that he was giving me the ring that night. But, you know, it's so different in those days. Nowadays, the bride even picks out the ring, you know, or the heavens. I was totally surprised. I didn't expect it at all. And then when we went up to visit with his folks over the weekend, Mom just laughed. Mom Lowder laughed because she instigated the whole thing, because that's how Grandpa gave his diamond to Grandma Lowder.
Oh.
So Grandma Lowder said, "This is the way you want to present it to Elaine." So we have quite a story about that. So when Valentine's Day comes around, I think, yeah, I remember how I got my ring. And I remember Ron's look at me when I said, "Is it real?"
And he didn't get out of the car. He stayed.
Oh,
He didn't run away.
so funny. Anyway, so yes, I gave him a chocolate.
So where were you that day? At a game?
Yes, I told Holly, I don't remember where we'd been, but I knew it was kind of late, but I couldn't remember. So I thought there was something important. So I got out his scrapbook, because Mom Lowder kept all of his ball games, you know, the scrapbooks too. So I looked through here. Now, she knew it was important, because in this one it said, Nish and Lowder, blah, blah, blah. And then she wrote up here, 2/14/1953. So, and Shannon, and then she put down here that he had, how many points did he make? 19 in that game. So she knew it was an important night for him, because in a lot of these others, she didn't even put the date or anything. But so that's how I knew that we'd been to the ball game, and I had watched the ball game and came home.
All right.
Okay, next question.
Yeah, what else?
Did he say, "Will you marry me" at that point, or had he already talked to you about that? Or?
I don't remember.
Gotcha.
I'm sure. Oh, I do know this, because we did say something about I always wanted to be married in June. And it was going to be in June. And then he said, "I'm going into the Army." And September. I wanted to be married in September. That was it. And he says, "Oh, no. I'm going into the Army like 1st of August. I think that's when his papers came through for the first one. And he said, "We're going to be married before I go into the Army. So we're going to have to set a date, you know." And I thought, June, you know, there was a song, June, whatever, I don't know. So that's why we selected you. I come find out our good friends, Lowder and Dana, was her last name Dana Evans, I can't remember now, has selected June 25th also. So the two of us had our wedding at the same time. But we were married in Salt Lake, and I don't remember where they were married. Anyway. Yes, that's how we came to a June wedding.
So Grandpa was the star basketball player, huh? 19 points and...
Oh, all the way through. Lowder, big, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, he was. Mm-hmm.
It was a big deal.
That's awesome.
And that's why I came home with Rob Paul on the weekends or special times, you know, if he was going to have big ball games. And sometimes I'd stay 2 or 3 days if I didn't have a lot of classes, you know. Then I'd travel back to the Y. Because at that time, I knew I really cared for him. But until I went away to the Y, he was just another boyfriend that I really cared about. But, boy, absent makes the heart grow fonder. That's for darn sure.
All right.
That's that story.
Did you turn off?
Awesome.
Yep.
Tiny bubbles.
Tiny bubbles.
In
Da, da, da.
the
Sing it.
sky, tiny, I don't know the rest of it.
Well, and I don't remember it either, but it was very popular. And so we sat down at the table, and on the table they brought us these drinks in a glass like this, pretty, with a little umbrella, you know, fancy, and one for Dad, one for me. I saw him lift it up like this, and so I thought, oh, why not? So I took a little sip. I said, oh, that's pretty good. And it was colored, you know, pretty, you know. He said, you like that? I said, yeah, that was pretty good. But he didn't drink anymore, so I took another swallow. He said, you like that? And I said, yeah, that's really good. So I took some more.
You polished it off.
And pretty soon it was down to about there.
Pretty soon you're under the table.
He still hadn't taken any of his. But I didn't think anything of it. And the show started to go. In the meantime, I kept drinking my drink. And he said, you finished your drink? I said, yeah. He said, do you want mine? Oh. And I said, aren't you going to? He said, no, I'm not going to drink it. And he started to laugh. And I said, well, what's so funny? He says, do you know what you're drinking? I had no idea. And it was
Mahi.
A Matai.
It's a rum.
Matai, or
Mai Tai.
Mai Tai.
it was an alcohol drink.
Yeah, good stuff.
Grandma.
But I thought it was delicious. And I drank the whole thing. I was ready to drink it. He said, I'd have to carry you back to the hotel if you'd had mine.
Were you so mad? Were you like
But
really mad?
I never,
She was smashed.
I didn't know what an alcohol drink was. He knew it all, you know, Dad.
It was when he tasted it.
He knew every,
Just let you do it.
but he just wanted to egg me on a little bit. And
Yeah.
It was entertainment. It's part of the show.
it was entertainment for him to watch me drink that whole
Don
thing.
Ho, Elaine Smash show.
Did you
And-
get like really loopy and did you feel funny?
Nah.
I don't remember.
So probably.
You were a little buzzed.
Oh, I do know that he looked around the room and asked anybody if they were there for their anniversaries, wedding, or anything like that. And we were there. It was close to the 25th of June, pretty close to our anniversary or something. And Ron, I think, raised his hand. But I said, no, I'm not going up on the stage. You know, no.
Not
And
my
so-
inebriated state.
That kind of ended that. But I said, I want to take my glass. And Ron said, I think that's a great souvenir. So I brought my glass home.
So you drank alcohol and you stole a glass.
I did. And it's the only alcohol I've ever had
Good job.
That you know of.
That you know.
that he tricked me into it. Oh, but we've laughed about that
Oh, I'm sure.
because he's the one that laughed.
Yeah.
I was stunned. I did. But I will admit it sure was good.
That's so funny,
Oh.
Grandma. I love it. That's awesome.
Yep, my tie. Oh gosh. But it was so pretty, you know, they put the
Yeah.
little umbrella on and all that
Yeah.
foamy, I don't know, but anyway. There you go, Brett.
Thank you.
There's my story with my Don Hole glass.
That's their story. She's sticking to it.
So, Grandma, you've been on a lot of really fun trips with Grandpa.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. What's your favorite one?
New England in the fall.
Oh, yeah? That's cool.
Yeah, because we traveled for, 2 weeks about in the car.
Really?
And we went from one state to another through New York, Vermont. We had the crab, lobster,
Lobster roll.
yes,
Clam chowder.
clam chowder, and we saw elk, and we stopped the highway and looked down. You know, one time we never made reservations. We just drive along, and when it started getting dark, we thought, okay, we better start looking for a place to stay.
Yeah.
And that's the way we did it. And it was fun.
Yeah.
And this one time, what do they call it? Claiborne in Kentucky, where they race the horses? Is it Claiborne?
No.
Anyway, we couldn't find a place, but they said there's this family that live way out on the point, and sometimes they'll take couples in if they're decent people. We'll call them and see if they have a room, and they did. And we went. Do you know they had a dog? Guess what the dog's name was?
Chauncey.
Chauncey.
Was it really? No way.
That's
I've-
right.
That's
I
funny.
may have written it up in my history.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And the bed was this high, silk sheets. I mean, really elaborate. And it was way out on the point. I went to say, like, well, when they talk about the Kentucky Derby, they talk about where they put the horses out to pasture, and gosh, I wish I could. I can't remember all that stuff. But anyway, we had a room way out there. And so, little things like that
Yeah.
really make it
Oh, yeah. When did you guys go on that
endearing to you when you think about. I mean, Alaska, all those places were fun,
trip? Right.
but you don't have the memories like you do when you're traveling by car and stopping, all this, And big face on the mountain, what did they call him?
The old man on the mountain.
Old man
Did you
on-
know he fell?
Oh, yeah, I've got it all written up. Not written up, but I copied it, tore it out of the paper, cut it out of the paper, and put it in my history book, in my photo album.
Yeah.
Because I thought, oh my gosh, it sure did change it when it fell. That I had pictures of
So
the
you
original.
drove through there.
I had pictures of the original. Oh yeah, I went right through there.
Yeah, I
pic-
drove by that all the time on my mission.
You did well.
I
See,
lived in Berlin, New Hampshire, and we drive up through that pass.
Vermont.
Up in the White Mountains.
Yes, that's where we went.
Yeah,
See, oh, I love that area.
it's nice.
Oh
When
yes,
did you guys
Lots
do
of
that,
moose.
Grandma?
Did you see moose?
down in the creeks or rivers.
Yeah, lots of moose. And it always says,
Don't get close.
yeah. And they have all the signs that say, break for moose, it could save your life. That's what all the signs say.
Yeah, I don't know that I wrote. Well, maybe I wrote some of it in my history. but I kept just a photo album of each vacation. It's in there in your bedroom, in that closet
Yeah.
by the sink.
Yeah.
One of them will say Vermont or New England in the fall. That's probably what it says.
Yeah.
And then there are all the pictures and everything there.
When did you guys do that?
Early on, right after.
When
Was
you
he
first got
still?
married?
Was he still at
After
Berkeley?
we all-
I was married to Todd when you
it was
went on
after
that
we
trip.
all left the house.
Oh, this was like after you guys had kids and stuff.
After we all left the house, you did that trip, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure he would retired from Berkeley when we did that. Maybe
Yeah.
so.
Maybe.
Maybe it was in between one of those easy jobs that he
Yeah.
took. Have you been recording that?
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Gotta
Well,
get some good
anyway.
stuff, Grandma. What other kind of trips have you guys been on? Where all have you guys been?
Oh, you name it. We've been down to Mexico, down, a couple of times down there, and Hawaii, and when we went to St. Thomas.
You went to St. Thomas.
Yeah, St. Thomas.
Yes, and they always said if you're going to buy any jewelry, I think that's where you buy it.
Yeah.
And Mother had an opal for her wedding ring. And I always thought, but with 5 girls, who's going to get the opal? So Mother gave it to Carol, her oldest granddaughter. And then her wedding band went to Joanne. And Ron knew that, I always liked that opal. So when we went, he said, let's buy you an opal ring.
Really?
And I thought, yeah, let's do. So that's when I got my opal ring.
Oh, cool.
And I wore it for a number of years. And then one Sunday, and I didn't know, but I lost the opal.
Oh, really?
And I said, and we went back and looked, but the jeweler said they crack easy. He said, I probably hit something and it cracked and then it fell out. So we replaced the ring, and the little diamonds were still, but the opal was gone.
Yeah.
But he just replaced it. You can't even tell.
Oh, that's cool.
But I learned a lesson, so now I only wear it special times.
Yeah.
I don't wear it all the time now.
Yeah.
But this one I wear all the time, and this is the one that the boys and Dad picked out for me. You wouldn't even remember, because I think he got it when the kids were like 14, 12, 10, 8, 6. We went over to, wasn't quite front, but one of those places over by J.C. Penney's way over there, where they had jewelry, cheap, not cheap, but
Yeah.
where you could pick out. And he had them put the 5 stones in, and they gave it to me for Mother's Day. You wouldn't even remember that, would you?
Nope.
And I've worn it ever since.
I love it. I want one like that when I
Yep.
have kids.
And the 2 stones, because I have the 2 Junes, and then the other,
Yeah. That's really
So
cool.
there's the 5. And the guy looked at it when I had reset the opal. He says, oh, they're in there. They'll never come out.
That's really cool.
And they haven't. So that's, Alaska.
It's Alaska.
Hawaii.
Went to Europe, right? Where
Down-
in Europe have you been?
Oh, London. Well, that was with Virginia. When we went to London.
Oh, yeah.
And that was fun. And then with Tori, we went to Italy a couple of times.
Yeah.
And that was fun
to
because
China?
we took, yes, when we went to Branson, that was fun at Christmas time. And we saw all the shows. That's when you saw the Osmonds, Andy Williams, and I love, those.
Andy Williams.
Yeah. Branson, Missouri.
In fact, I have his tape, not the,
Yeah.
what do you, the VC, just the regular,
CD. His little album CD.
yeah, you CD, Andy Williams, yeah, over there. But anyway, that same year, and then he saw this deal to China. And I said, we just got back from Branson. Honey, we'll never get a better deal than this to go to China. I said, why would you want to go to China?
For the food.
Because it's educational and blah, 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 blah. And it's a good deal and all. And I thought, China. Okay. We'll go to China.
Hey, look.
Oh my gosh, it's one of the best trips we've had.
Yeah.
I loved it. Oh, the cars, honk, honk, honk.
Yeah.
And bicycles, you know,
Oh, yeah, on the bike.
and watermelon and every meal.
Wow.
And that's how they end their meals, with the watermelon.
Really?
Really?
Why?
And that's their dessert.
That's cool.
And
Right.
lazy Susans, you know, around.
Oh, yeah.
And nice people. One child, one boy, but our guide said he had a girl. And we said, oh, but they kept their daughter.
Good for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then since then, you know, they've changed the laws.
Yeah.
But as we were going in, you know, the rug that I have on my coffee table under that plant, you haven't noticed maybe, but we bought that little rug. But we saw all of that, the artwork, and but we noticed this class coming up, going. They were all boys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Ron pointed that out. He said, "Look at that class going up there," and I looked. And by golly, they were boys.
Because they had a law, right, that you can only have one
Only
child.
one kid, so everybody wanted the boy
Everyone wanted a
to
boy.
pass on their name and take care of them, provide
Yeah.
for them.
But then
Yes.
it's like you're kind of screwed
And then your whole
with
country's,
your country.
in 20 years, your country's
Yeah.
going to not populate.
Right.
Can you believe
Right.
that?
So they changed
And
it.
they were all
Yeah, that's crazy.
boys. But when you guys saw the show with the dancers, the Chinese dancing, and we went to one of those shows that was really
That's
artistic.
cool.
They were throwing up, you know, it was really nice.
Yeah,
we
it's kinda like the Olympics.
enjoyed it. Yeah, very colorful, but our guide spoke very good English, and he didn't agree with a lot of the rules that they have in China. You
Yeah.
know, like I say, they kept their daughter,
Yeah.
and in fact, in the book that I have back there, has the picture of our tour group, and Ron had a picture of just Ron and our tour leader,
That's cool.
and that was fun. He was a nice guy.
That's
But you forget, Janelle, I forget half of what.
Yeah.
But back there, I've got book on every tour that we went, pictures of every. And
But we had a lot of fun vacations when we were little kids. We'd go back to North Ogden every August, borrow
yes.
Uncle Merle's
Oh,
camper. We'd jump in the back of that camper and go drive up to Lava Hot Springs or Yellowstone. And
wasn't that fun?
you guys would always get a souvenir log. If you look in the front yard, you see all these different kind of logs out there.
Oh,
All logs that Dad would pull out of lakes and side of the road. And
Oh,
the big
yes.
one was the funniest one. He pulled a log out of the lake that was heavier than about a 100-pound log, and he put it in the back of that camper. And we put it back in the station wagon, drove it all the way back to California, and he stuck it out there in the front yard.
And now it
Finally
weighs
rotted out.
10
It
pounds.
finally dried out, rotted out. Now it's 10 pounds out there. That big huge log.
That's funny.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
exactly.
We'd sleep in a tent, and Mom and Dad would sleep in the camper.
Yeah.
Good job, Grandma.
Oh, that's right. How about the one when we went down south? And Phil's heard about that we dropped her off at BYU, and we took the boys on down to Southern California, or down Southern Utah. And it was just fun down there. But Jill can understand that. We just dropped her off at the Y, and down we went.
Oh, see ya.
Oh, golly.
Isn't that perfect?
And then fishing
Yeah.
with, what was that uncle's name? Lowder?
Yeah.
No.
Jackson Hole or wherever that was. When we walked down, we stayed in that cabin, walked down to the river to fish. We saw that badger.
Yes, and he's mean.
We were walking back from
They're
the river.
mean.
We were going back to the cabin. Tori was up ahead of me by 50 yards, and all of a sudden I see Tori stick his fishing pole down towards the ground and back up as fast as he could. I was like, what was he doing? Looked like he was, like in a sword fight with his fishing pole down on the ground. He's backing up. And then all of a sudden he runs back forward again. And we go running up there, and he's pointing into this hole. Man, there's a badger in that hole. He jumped out and scared me to death. And then when he jumped out and Tori backed up, then he ran back down in his hole. So we ran up to that hole. We're sticking our fishing poles down in that hole, and he's hissing at us, snarling at us. He'd jump out. He'd take like 2 steps out of his hole, and we would scatter. We'd scream, and then he'd go back in. We'd jump back over. It was the stupidest thing. We taunting a badger. How stupid was that? They could tear our
Yes.
faces off.
Yes.
Man, he was mean. That was a cool thing. We'd catch those. We caught some fish. If I remember right. We had fish. A lot of fish.
But you were the fisherman.
Yeah.
Out of all the boys, you were the one that liked
When I had patience to sit there and
Like-
try to catch
fish.
Everybody else would try it for 30 seconds and leave, and I'd sit there forever. I'm going to catch one. I'm going to catch one.
In fact, I think when came to buying a fishing pole, you were the only one that Dad bought the fishing pole for.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yes.
Just like we went on those campouts with the Ward overnighters up at some lake, we were trolling around the lake with the tuckers and a canoe, trolling around the lake trying to fish. And I remember I was on the bank trying to catch a fish and caught a little 6-inch fish. I was so proud of it. Ran back to the campground with a little 6-inch fish. Nobody else could catch anything. I caught a 6-inch fish. I thought I was a fisherman.
There's just
Yeah.
too patience for all the girls that were coming your way, Dad.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, I remember taking those girls up to Lake Tahoe fishing.
I remember that. And there was a snake in the river. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Garter snake and
Yeah,
we
snakes in water, man.
I
Freaks me
totally
out.
remember that.
we'd sit there and fish and they try it for 30 seconds. Well, the problem is when I took these girls fishing, the first time I took them fishing was at a trout farm. You
Oh,
know,
well, be
throwing a
sure.
Yeah.
Empty hook and pull out 12 fish in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So they thought fishing was kind of fun and easy. And then we went up to the cabin up in Lake Tahoe and went to a river with real fishing. Got
And they
knocked out.
didn't-
Where are the fish? Well, this,
Yeah.
this is real fishing. You might not get a bite all day.
And they didn't.
Wasn't as fun.
Yeah, that was a mistake. Taking
No,
them
it
to a
was good.
trout
I
farm.
remember
The
that.
first time they went fishing was at a trout farm.
I gotta go make that dessert
was a
for
mistake.
tonight.
Oh, okay.
Just like the mistake the first time I took Vicky golfing was on a hot day. We didn't even get a cart. We walked it on a hot day. Oh, that was stupid. She said, "Man, this is stupid. I'm not playing this stupid game ever again." I don't,
Yeah, don't take me fishing on a date, anybody. I'll say no thanks.
Fishing, golfing.
Try again.
Oh, I forgot Frank Jackson played for Duke.
yes.
All of a sudden it showed him on That the was TV the and I'm like, he beginning, looks
Oh, I
familiar.
forgot.
Frank Jackson.
Yeah, we were watching that Duke game. They lost. I forgot. Frank
Good.
Jackson was on there.
He deserved to lose.
From
He
Long
should have
Beach.
gone to BYU.
I missed the shower.
That's right. I
I'm
forgot.
glad Duke